All right, so this is going to be the lab data for lab number 35, our redox titrations. So hopefully by this point, you've already watched the pre-lab video, right? But you might not have been able to access any of this other stuff yet, right? And so we're going to walk through what that's going to be, right? So the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and click open your spreadsheet link. Right? And your spreadsheet link is going to have some of the information of how we're going to start to collect our data and how we're going to move through that. You also want to go ahead and open up your lab simulation. Get that open as well. These extra resources can be there if you are struggling with this lab. One of them shows you visually what it looks like when we do this titration in real life. The other one kind of walks you through some of the calculations. So if you're struggling with that part, I would definitely recommend looking at that part. Or if you're struggling with the calculations, look at that. So for our lab basically consists of 3 parts. We have part 1 where we're going to standardize the sodium thiosulfate solution. We have part 2 where we're going to record the oxidizing capacity of 2 types of cleaner, right? One of them is like Comet. The other one is going to be bleach, right? And then we have part 3 where you guys are going to get an unknown, right? Now, you don't have to worry about part 3. You can go ahead and cross that out right now. We're not going to be doing part 3. We are going to be doing both of these exercises, and we're not going to be doing the consider this, right? So no consider this, yes for the 2 exercises, no for part 3, right? So in part 1, which is what we're going to start with, this is going to be our online simulation. And so it's asking us to find the concentration of a thiosulfate solution. Now, if we go back to our lab simulation, this link here, right? When we open it up, it's going to bring us to something that looks like this. We're going to use this website in order for us to calculate out part 1. So our data sheet, as you can see, is actually kind of open here, right? I filled in the volume here, but you're going to have to put in your own concentration that's going to give you, and then you have to do your titration to find this next part. So go ahead and click on number 1. We want to select the reaction, and we want to choose this I2 one. Right? We're going to be doing iodine with our thiosulfate. You can see now we have our solution down here. It's that pink color. We're going to try to titrate this until it turns blue. Now, as we work our way through, this molarity of I2 is going to be what our solution starts with. So that's going to be our starting concentration there. All right, so we've selected our I2 and we're all set up to begin our titration. Now, what you'll see is that our molarity here is going to be our molarity for part 1, so concentration of I2. That's going to be equal to us for that IO3. We're going to be able to plug that in into where on your data sheet it says volume of KIO3. And so we're going to use that as our comparison, is we're going to use our I2. Now, be careful. This is I2, not IO3. And so when you use your equation, you want to make sure that you use it so that this is going to be the volume of I2 solution. And so you want to use this equation down here when you convert it into your thiosulfate. Don't use the one from your lab manual from the KIO3 because you are using I2 down here, right? So we use the concentration of our I2, and then its volume is down here, that 25.00 milliliter, which is why we have that set up here. Now, as you go through, then you can start your titration. You can use this to kind of indicate how much you would like to put in, right? So you can slide this up. It goes in 0.5 milliliter increments. Once you slide it up, when you let go, then it puts in that amount of liquid, right? So I put in my 22 milliliters. Now the endpoint that we're looking for is we want it to turn blue, right? So now we're in yellow. So if I wanted to, I could continue up a little bit more and a little bit more until we're going to see a blue solution. Right? So if this was a titration, this would be that we've hit our endpoint at least. but probably wouldn't be very good, right? We're at 34 milliliters. And so we might have overshot that because, as you can tell, I was kind of going very quickly with my titration. What I want to do now is, if I want to try this again, is I want to repeat this experiment. If you reset it, it's going to give you it's going to basically start it brand new. You have to reselect your reaction and it will give you a new molarity. So go ahead and just repeat it. Repeat keeps our molarity the same, our volume the same. And now I can go up, and instead of doing 34, I might think, well, let's put in 31. And then from there, now I can go in a little bit slower to do my titration. So maybe I'm still going a little bit fast because we're still a little bit far away. All right, so I know it's not 32. And so I think that this one's kind of useful in that it does have you practice your titrations, and it will go through on a single drop, 32.6 on this one. So a lot better than that 34. The challenge though with it is you won't be able to see when those that faint yellow really starts to go away and when that blue starts to linger. So it can be a little bit trickier. So I do normally about three tries to get that value. The 32.6. So this time, oh, you gotta wait for this to fill. I'm gonna go all the way up to the top. Now I can go real slow here. 32.6. So I was right last time. It was a good titration. And so now I can do my calculation. So what I would put in here was my initial start is always going to be 0.00. And then I can put my 32.6 in here. And then I can find my net volume. All right. So for your part one, you want to fill in your own molarity of whatever the simulation gives you. You want to do your titration, and you want to give me your best titration down here on the last part. Do this, and then you can calculate your net volume and your molarity, and all of that is going to go just like you would in for trial number one. You'll get your value down here, right? And so that's all you need to do for part one, is you do that experiment, and then you should be getting your own values. Now for this top part, you don't have to worry about your final and your initial. You can just give me the net volume of that KiO3. That can be the 25, right? The volume of our I2 solution. So when you're going through your lab, just take out the KiO3, put in I2, and that's going to be your I2 solution. So that's what's happening for part one. For part two, I've gone ahead and I've given you that sample data. That's going to be this one here. And so you can use this sample data. I've given you the standard concentration of the thiosulfate, so this is what you should use when you calculate them. I've given you the amount of the thiosulfate that you needed and the mass of the solution of the sample. So you can do that for part A, and this one is going to be part B. And so you can work your way through that part, and once you're all set, you can complete the other part of your lab. There we go. Which is going to be to calculate your percent by weight of your NaOCl for each of those experiments. Now, I'm going to show you something. I've created my own spreadsheet for that way for us to work on. But you can also use the same thing that I'm doing. The only thing is you can't make any edits on this spreadsheet itself. So you're going to have to go through, you're going to have to make a copy of this file, make a copy, and then you can make your own version of this. Or you can copy and paste this data into your own spreadsheet if you prefer to do it in Sheets or Excel, right? So I have locked this page so that way we won't all be adjusting it. And so you want to make sure that you go through and you update those values. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to merge it on over into my own spreadsheet. That's the one that I have over here. And so what you want to do with this one is one of the advantages of doing some of your data work on the thing like a spreadsheet is that you can start to automate those calculations. What that means is I can set up my cells so that way as I plug in my volumes and my concentrations, it can take care of that for me. So I've done a different titration. This is what I was using when I was first setting up. And so I have a concentration that it gave me here in, from the simulation. So for ours, we had it at our 0.2025. And so I can put that in here. I can put our volume in. This one used 20 or 32.6. Start at 0. And you can see that I've got it set up so it already calculates my net volume. It also calculates my molarity. Right? And what you want to do is you want to use like a formula for your cells. So this cell is defined as going to be my final minus my initial. And so every time I change these, then it updates the rest. And then my molarity is set up in order to use that volume and my other volumes and a conversion factor to translate them over. And so this could be something that's really useful for you, right? You can have that set up so that way when you do your next trial, like say for part A, let's say this took 2.50, it can go through and it can calculate all of my concentrations. Right? This one, maybe it took me, I don't know, 3.6. Right? And so it can go through and it can do all those concentrations for me as well. Right? So inside your lab, I will put in some recommended guides for setting up a Google Sheet. So if you want to do some simple calculations with your Google Sheet, then you can do that. If you have specific questions about that, we can also work through that as well. Just remember that if you want to use your spreadsheet to do those calculations, you do need to make your own copy, or you need to copy and paste it over into your Excel. Okay? It's not as important for this one because you only have 3 of them, so it's not so hard to do it by hand. But you could set this up if you ever needed to do like 50 titrations, then you could have it so it would do all those calculations for you as well. All right. So part 1, you just need to do 1 trial. You do this from your online simulation. Part 2, this is going to be what you guys get from me. So this is what I provided you. So you do 1 trial for each A and B. And then for part 3, you don't have to do. And then you do need to do both of these exercises. You don't need to do your consider this. And then when all of that is done, go ahead and scan it in, upload it onto your Gradescope. Good luck.